Hi, this is Roger in Finland, and today we'll be checking how good is the Panasonic G9 Stabilization. So for the impatient ones, the IBIS on the Panasonic G9 is very good. In combination with compatible lenses with the dual ILS, it's even better, and additionally you can still add the electronic image stabilization, which makes it even better in most situations. However, the counterpart is that it's a little bit quirky when it comes to selecting when and how to use it, but we're gonna get through that in more detail. And in more details, we're going to be checking the different options of stabilization that we have, the quirky bits, then how it behaves in use, and I'm going to probably reiterate a couple of times how good it is. So the stabilization possibilities with the Panasonic G9 and the lenses for Micro Four Thirds, we have OIS for Panasonic lenses or optical image stabilization. Then we have the IBIS in-body image stabilization and electronic stabilization in addition to that. Then we do have two basic modes of operation, which are normal, and then something called lock IS, which increases even further the image stabilization in certain conditions. So the idea with lock IS is that it's very good if you're trying to stand still with the same frame, but if you're trying to pan around, then it's gonna do funky things because that's not what it's expecting compared to the normal operation of the in-body image stabilization. The reason, by the way, that I'm not showing off the Panasonic G9 is because I'm trying to do it so that when I talk about the camera, I'm also filming myself with the same camera, so you get an idea of the image quality, but you're gonna be seeing me using it when I'm outside testing the stabilization. Don't worry about that. So we're finally out and we can do the stabilization test. I've been waiting for the weather to stop sucking, and now it's not raining anymore, but now truly we're in Finland, I suppose. This is not even back winter. To make this test, I'll have this action camera here helping me as well, so you can see how do I move, how much does this shake, and then how does it look. We're gonna be testing a vlogging test and me walking a little bit around with stabilization on, off, and then with electronic on and off. So let's go and see what happens. Right now I'm using the 12 to 60 Panasonic, which is a stabilized lens. And I have it at 12mm, which is the widest that it goes, which would be probably the most fitting vlogging focal length that I have for Micro Four Thirds. And there we go. I feel like I'm shaking like crazy because this is kind of heavy for what I'm used to, and also because it's cold. So let's see what happens when I walk. And again, now stabilization. Yep, stabilization is on, electronic is off. And now I'm just gonna try to walk and do like a vlogger would do, I suppose, which is walk around. As you can see, there's no people around because you shouldn't be around people, because I don't like to be around people doing what I'm doing right now. And this is Finland anyway. I'm in the middle of the woods. I can see people at 200 meters away. They're making me uncomfortable. But yeah, so this is how it looks with normal stabilization on, which in this case, by the way, is dual IS because this lens does support it. And now you've seen me also how do I walk and maybe how much does this shake. Let me now pull my glove and turn on electronic stabilization, which I cannot do while this is recording. And now I just turned the electronic optical stabilization on, which you cannot do while the video is recording, by the way, so something for you to know. But this is how it looks like. Now again, I'm just holding it. I have my elbow attached to my body to have a little bit more stability, but I'm using the anchor nebula fully extended, and I'll just be walking normally. I'm not trying to do any ninja walk, so this is how it looks with dual IS plus electronic image stabilization. So how is it? And again, you can see how am I walking and avoiding the obstacles, because there are some. This is shaking really badly. It's way too heavy for me, so I'm curious to see how stable will be the final result. Really fantastic. Still 12mm, no stabilization at all. I'm just holding the camera out as before, elbow to the body. This is really uncomfortable. I seriously now admire very much Casey's turn for vlogging with the A7 S3 and whatever else he's doing with this fully extended tripod. This is really uncomfortable. I don't know why would anybody do this, but I'm just gonna walk vlogging style, looking and looking at the camera without any kind of stabilization. And what I'm gonna do now Actually, I'm not gonna do it now. But what I'm gonna do in post is put side by side the same walk in the same direction, stabilized and unstabilized. So you can see how good this stabilization really is. It is, isn't it? But now let's take a look at the Quirks, how to turn it on and off, and what options do we have. So if your lens has optical image stabilization, there's two different options. One is that you would have a switch in the lens itself to turn it on and off, which will turn the stabilization on and off overall for the camera. And if the lens does not have its own switch, then you need to do the turning on and off through the camera. You can set it, of course, in one of the custom buttons or the soft custom buttons, but if not, it's in the camera movie part of the menu, and it's in the second page. It says stabilizer, and all of the options then are selectable there. And now let me take my notes. If the lens has an optical image stabilization and it's compatible with dual IS, by turning on the stabilization either in the lens or in the camera body, you will have dual image stabilization. And if you turn it off, you don't have nothing. So you cannot choose optical stabilization but not IBIS, or IBIS but not optical stabilization. If your lens has optical image stabilization but it's not compatible with dual IS, the switch will turn on and off the optical image stabilization and will do nothing with the IBIS. So it's either optical or nothing. And if your lens does not have optical image stabilization, then the switch within the menu will turn on the IBIS on and off. One small thing is that if you're using lenses that do not have any electronic contact information, then when you turn on the camera, it's going to ask you which is the focal length. And it's important to set it correctly because it has an impact on how does the stabilizer behave. Then additionally, as a separate option, we have the electronic image stabilization, which works on top of the existing stabilization by cropping the image a little bit. That's going to make it more stable. And I say that you can use it on top of the existing one because you cannot choose to use electronic image stabilization but not use IBIS or optical image stabilization. So in this case is either the three of them or none, but you cannot choose the separate options. I'm not sure whether that's a good or a bad thing, but that's something for you to know. And then the option of choosing the lock image stabilization or normal mode of operation, it applies to what you have chosen. So either the dual IS or just whatever other option depending on the lens, plus or not plus the electronic image stabilization. Then you can choose whether it's lock IS or normal operation. And as I said, lock IS is designed to make it even more stable, given that you're trying to be very, very stable. So it works if you keep the same frame, the same subject. I think it works very, very well if you're trying to dolly in, like push in or push out. But if you're going to be panning or moving around, the normal mode of operation will be better because this is going to be making the sensor try to jerk around because it's not actually knowing what to do. It's expecting a static image, or it's expecting an image that you want to keep static. That's what this lock IS does. And if all of this was a little bit confusing, let me explain it once again. So you can have stabilization on and off, and it might mean different things depending on the lens. If your lens is dual IS compatible, stabilization on, it means that it will do optical image stabilization plus IBIS, dual IS. If it's not compatible, stabilization on means only using optical image stabilization. And if your lens does not have image stabilization, turning stabilization on will mean using only the IBIS. Then on top of this, you can add the electronic image stabilization, which will add that crop factor. And then regardless of how you have these two options turned on or off, you can decide whether the mode of operation is lock IS. Remember, really static subjects do not pan, or the normal mode of operation, which should be maybe a little bit less stable, but it's a lot more movement friendly. So what did you think about the image stabilization samples that I've been showing? Is this something that you already knew and were well aware of? Panasonic is actually well known for having excellent image stabilization, and that goes back to the G80, which was already excellent. So these newer cameras just make it better, but this is something you have been using. And I'm curious to see if have you learned something in this video, or will this make you consider the G9? If you like the video, please like and subscribe, and we're gonna see you soon for more content.